Hello and welcome to Engineer's Box. Now today we'll be having a look at GUIs. Now for a little while now, if you've been following what I've been doing, you'll know that for the IC2 machines I've been using a custom GUI method. Now granted this is actually SimplySarc's method, but I've just kind of taken to it quite a bit. I quite like it. I've also actually kind of made a few adjustments myself that I really quite like being able to use animations and things like that. Now, if we actually take a look, say, at the extractor right here, stick this down, take a look inside, you can see that you've got this custom GUI here. Now, it's actually pretty simple. The base idea is that it's not actually the original GUI that you're just overlaying. It's just an item retextured. So if we can move this around, you can see that it's actually just a retexture there. Same with the base part over here. That's retextured as well. So yeah, it's really quite simple, but really effective. That's the great thing about it. It's the thing that I like most. Now, granted, it does have limitations in terms of the way you can do animations and things like that. Generally, the limitations come where with animation, you are looking at a sequence of frames, rendering them over and over and over again. Now, traditionally, you could stick these in just in a single PNG file, layer them on top of each other, and it'll play through. Now, the thing about GUIs is they play out a little bit differently. Because of their size and the way Minecraft renders things, it means that the animation doesn't actually render properly. It's size dependent and file size dependent as well. It's kind of all over the shop, and I won't go into it because it's a little bit out there. But there is another way of doing it. And the way that I've been doing it is actually just using a sequence of command blocks here. Now, yes, granted, this is pretty big when it is played out like so, but when it's condensed down, you're only looking at about 3 or 4 blocks, which is pretty nice, pretty easy to work with. So if I actually just take a look at the animation within this, then we can take resin, for example, put the extractor down, fill it up. You can see that changed. Now it's actually a different model entirely now. So if we put in this resin here, you can see that the animation will begin, and you can see that it's actually kicked into action. Now what it actually is just a counter or a timer that's going through, and each of these command blocks is replacing the texture of the diamond hoe each time. Now keep in mind that the original diamond hoe is still here, and that hasn't been changed at all. So if we take a look into the tools, and the diamond hoe is still there. So we're actually using, if you've seen recently my custom items video, then you'll know about this. We're actually using the LOC name method. Now this is basically uses one of the more unique naming systems in Minecraft. So in this case, if we give ourselves, let's say a bowl, and we'll just give it a tag. Now in this case we want to create a custom name for it, and we don't want it to be able to be replicated in an anvil. So LOC name actually does that for us. So if we do a display and then LOC name, we can give it whatever name we want. So let's say we give it tester. So as you can see, the name is tester, and it is not italicized. This basically means that it is not an NBT alterable name. That basically means that it is definite. It's not something that can be achieved through Minecraft or a survival fashion or something like that. Basically, but also another advantage of definite NBT tags is that they are considered constants. The thing about this is that JSON and Java require, well, they actually depend heavily on constants and their ability to shift data and store them. So in this case, the constant of this name is something that we can actually test for and replace the texture of it. So if we actually take a look into the files, into the game files, and the resource pack files, we actually can have a look at how we do this. So I'll see you guys in a second. Alrighty, so now that we're in the files, the game files, we can go into resource packs and then into the 3D models and custom items, my main resource pack, and we'll go down to Minecraft, textures, and GUIs. This is where I store all of the custom GUIs and all of those things. Now, if we actually take a look at what the base texture for these items are, we can do that with a simple editing program. So in this case, Paint.net, Photoshop, whatever you like to use. I like to use Photoshop quite a lot, but I'm just going to use Paint.net for the moment, considering it's quite simple and a lot easier to work with. So if we drag in the lower section here, we can see that this is it. That is literally all we have. Now, it is positioned in that spot specifically because the way items are rendered, or textures of items are rendered, is that they are rendered specifically to the position of the texture itself, so it's definite. So in this case, the item renders the entirety of this as the corner right about there. So in this case, that sits in the above slot, or in the lower left slot of a chest, something like that, and covers the lower half of the player's inventory. So that's pretty cool. So you can actually just do a custom overlay of that, and each of those purple, and green squares are your inventory slots. So they're the things you can look out for and make sure that you've got space for items and you don't have overlapping. So now if we take a look at the upper section, we can see that it is very similar. Now this is actually shifted down a bit. The reason for this is it caters for the fact that the actual item itself sits right there. So it's actually looking at the fact, well, in this case, the item has to be above. So, okay, we'll shift it down a bit to account for that. Cool, all simple. Now this actually sits exactly in the same spots as it would in the in a chest inventory or something like that. And each of these purple and green squares do coincide with those slots as well. So you can see it works out pretty well. So if we actually have a look at the extractor, this folder, extractor progress, has all of the animation in it. So from the last one to the first one. So if we open up, say, a random 110 here, you can see that I've actually got, this is the top because the bottom does not need animation. So if we zoom in, you can see that it actually fits perfectly over the top of that one. And all we've got here is just a GUI, which is customized. So this is the sort of thing you can do. You can create your own sort of things, and each of the slots will coincide. Make sure they line up. That's where you have that original overlay sitting underneath it when you're creating this sort of thing. So then basically what we've got underneath for this one is we put this underneath, and then we just cut out these little slots. These ones are for the upgrades. I haven't actually added upgrades to any of the machines at the moment, just a side note, as I just wanted to get the base of all of them done before messing with the actual attributes of them. So in this case, we can see that it's about halfway through the extraction process of said item, whatever it happens to be, and it's charged, obviously. So pretty simple GUIs, and it's consistent overall for all of these. So if we take a look at this one here, you can see it's just beginning the animation through to its final stage where the item is outputted. So in this case, pretty simple, not much to it. It's just a simple retexturing of items. Now, if we actually take a look at how we retexture things. Now, as you know, I've been using this quite a lot. It's the MC Patcher method. So basically, it's a folder called MC Patcher within the Minecraft. Then you go CIT, and then this is your namespace where you can make folders called whatever you like. Machines in this case, we go to extractor, and here we go. Basically, what we've got here is we're looking for, well, actually this is for the block itself, where you're just looking for a specific item and then giving it some attributes, in this case just creating a blocked version of that. So that works pretty well. But the other way you can do it is actually just go back into the models, go into item, and then for the moment I'm using diamond hose, as you remember. So if we bring this back up, I've actually just got a ton of different items that I've retextured here. So we actually have a look, and all of these right here pertain to the extractor, all the way from the start of the animation to the finish. And all we're doing is we're just accounting for damage values, and then for a non-damaged item with this damage value, and we just replace it with these textures. Pretty simple, pretty easy to do. Now, the one thing that these do require is actually a model. Now that's pretty easy. So if we go back into models, go into GUIs, which is actually just the same folder, just the GUI, the model version of the GUI. So we go into here, we'll go to 10 like we did before, have a look at it. It's actually pretty simple. All you're doing is taking your texture and then assigning it a position in order to match up with the GUI so it actually overlays properly, and then the display, how it displays in the GUI in terms of its scaling and things like that. So pretty simple, not much to it. Seems overall pretty well done. Now, going back to what I said before about animation, there are two ways you can do it. You can do it with either consistencies, which is basically having a multitude of textures layered over the top of one each other, or just place them on top of each other, and then you run them through using a bit of MC Maker language. Pretty simple. The other one is using command blocks. Now, this one is a little bit more user-friendly, easier to work with, and you can adjust timings and things like that. That's why I prefer it. But overall, whatever suits your situation, really. So let's jump back into Minecraft and just tidy up a few little things. Alrighty, so now we're back in Minecraft. I just wanted to talk to you about the future of how these are actually going to work. So currently, as you know, what we're basing it around is SimplySarc's idea, which, by the way, is a great one, and I'll see if I can find the original video about what he's done with them, and I'll stick it in the description if you want to go and see that. But also, talking about actually what's going to happen with GUIs as we progress into the future versions of Minecraft. Now, with 1.13 coming out pretty soon, as we all know, with the releases of snapshots and things like that, we're all pretty keen to see how it all ties together and gives us some new advantages and things to do in terms of creations. So in this case, for GUIs, I'm hoping that, well, actually I've been playing around with some of the snapshots, and I think I've found a way that we can create clickable buttons with new GUIs. Now, it actually does use an item in the inventory, so it does take up a slot. However, I think it could be cool. So the way it works is you actually have an item that doesn't have a texture, and you select it. When you click on it, you pick up the item, and it detects the fact that there is no more items in the inventory, and then when you put it back in, it's there again. So it detects the press of it, and then basically as you pull it up, it's an item with a special attribute that when you place it in whatever, if you exit out of it and it drops on the ground, it'll just destroy it. And if you place it in your inventory or in the inventory itself without that specific spot, then it'll just destroy it and replace the original spot. So you've actually got this kind of cancellation effect, so the button works properly. Now, at the moment in 1.12.2 and other versions that work doing this sort of stuff, it doesn't quite work. For a few reasons, namely because commands as of 1.12.2 don't really have the specificity that were required. Although, yes, it's possible, big, clunky, not really worth it for one button. You're looking at quite a few command blocks or functions, depending on what you're using, whatever. But that is definitely something that will become available to us pretty soon, and I think that could be really, really cool, something really awesome to work with. Now, the other thing is actually custom GUIs themselves. Now that we know for a fact that there will be custom crafting recipes in 1.13, and just before I go on, I'm not going to make this a 1.13 update video or anything like that. I just wanted to go over a few things. In that we can create new recipes and the outputs and whatever. Now, the advantage of this is actually we can create, currently as it stands, we can't do custom crafting with MBT, which is a big problem for a lot of the community, considering that a lot of creations are based around MBT-specific items, such as myself, with the creation of these blocks, things like that. However, I think the prospect of this gives us a little bit of hope into the fact that possibly data packs and other things like that could give us this advantage to do custom GUIs and things like that eventually, that are completely separate. So I think this could actually be one of the coolest updates we see in a while, and also can give us quite a lot of insight into what we can do in the future. Now, moving away from that and back to what we've got here is it's actually quite an interesting system, and I think it works really well in terms that it's not too big, it's not too clunky, and it's really smooth. GUIs are really awesome, so all credit to SimplySarc for actually doing this, because it's phenomenal. But yeah, so go ahead, play around with some GUIs and things like that. They're completely customizable. You can do it for double chests, you can do it for pretty much anything that takes an item slot. Keep in mind that to do it without well, to do it for, excuse me, an inventory such as a furnace is a lot harder, because you have to use the player's inventory as the placement for the item. However, I'm sure there'll be a workaround for this sort of thing eventually. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this sort of strange mishmash video today. And yeah, so let me know if you guys make some cool little custom GUIs, things like that on Twitter. As always, it'll be on screen and below. And yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed this today. And as always, catch you guys in the nearest of futures.